I am Dr. Stephen Smith, an integrative medicine physician, and today I'd like to talk to you about dairy. Now, I've always been a big consumer of dairy, especially as a child and a teenager, and as a result, that may have been why I had all the acne and allergies that I did as a teenager. But as we get older, it's also important to start avoiding and cutting down on dairy. Well, let's start as children. The big thing with children is type 1 diabetes. There are studies out there that show you have 11 to 13 times the chance of getting juvenile diabetes if you're a milk consumer, and especially if you start consuming milk before 3 months of age. That's when the gut is still developing. The reason is because some of the antibodies in milk are similar to the wall of the pancreas, which is the beta cell, and so you start developing antibodies toward dairy, and there's a cross reaction with the pancreas, and that's what happens in type 1 juvenile diabetes. The body starts attacking the pancreas, and dairy consumption is big in this. In the countries with the lowest dairy consumption, which is Japan and China, these are fairly rare diseases. In fact, Japan has 1/36 the rate of juvenile diabetes than Finland. And they also have the lowest consumption of dairy per capita. There is the China study. From that, there's a graph showing the consumption of dairy versus the rate of juvenile diabetes. It's a straight line, meaning a direct correlation between juvenile diabetes and dairy consumption. The more dairy, the higher the rate of juvenile diabetes. And there's also a link between autism and dairy, or casein, as the protein in dairy. The casein-free diet has consistently shown good results. I've treated a lot of autistic children, and one little girl in particular, she was around 5 or 6. She had severe autism, and she was fairly toxic. We looked at heavy metals and other things. She was very toxic in those, but she also had a problem with dairy. So we took her off dairy. We didn't treat anything else, and within a few days, she was completely non-autistic. Speech returned, everything was gone. It was quite amazing. Parents didn't take any of my other advice about working on her toxins or methylation or anything like that because she was non-autistic. So I anticipate she may have some problems later in life from those other things, but autism was gone within a matter of days. Now that's an unusual case, but that is an extreme of showing you how severe a casein reaction can be. A UK study showed that a casein-free diet resulted in 80% improvement in children with autism. They also had similar results with asthma, IBS, headaches. They all benefited from a casein-free diet. Now, the big one in adults is you should drink milk to prevent osteoporosis because you get all this calcium from milk. Well, actually, the opposite is true. The more milk you drink, the worse the osteoporosis. A study in the American Journal of Nutrition found actually no correlation between milk consumption and protection from osteoporosis. Here's the big one, cancer. Cancer rates in this country are skyrocketing. In lymphomas are the lymph glands that filter the fluids in your body. About 85% of your blood goes back into the veins. Another 15% of that fluid goes back through the lymphatic system. We found that dairy consumption is linked to lymphoma. The risk for dairy consumers of lymphoma is about 3.5 times those that are non-dairy consumers. That's a pretty high risk. Also, in ovarian cancer, the risk is 3 times that of non-dairy consumers. Lung cancer, 2.5 times the risk. And the journal Cancer reported 2.4 times the risk of prostate cancer if you consume dairy on a regular basis. The other factor that people thought about was, well, the Japanese and Chinese don't get these cancer because their race is somehow protected from that. Well, there are people that come to this country from Japan and China, and then they start eating like Americans, consuming dairy. When they do, their risks are the same as Americans. So I guess the take home from a big dairy consumer myself, at least I was in the past, is that you really want to reduce your risk by reducing your consumption of dairy. Either eliminate it completely or limit your consumption. The other big problem you may have is mucus. If you're having lots of mucus, the first thing to look about or think about is dairy. For example, if you're coughing and sneezing after a meal and you've had think back, did I have some dairy, ice cream or something like that? I think in a lot of cases that's been the case. Anyway, you want to limit your consumption of dairy, greatly reduce your health risks, especially in your children. You want to keep that dairy consumption down because you can reduce the risk of juvenile arthritis.